Welcome back to episode 9 of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Dan.
Hey Dan, how's it going today?
Doing pretty well. It's sunny, but a little windy.
Hey, I'll take that sun.
Right.
Hey, today we're excited to bring this episode to you. Our main topic today is talking about choosing what to play. And so we're pretty excited to cover this topic. There are so many factors to think about when choosing what game to play. And then even within a game, choosing, what factions or armies or whatever to play while you're playing the game.
Yeah.
So, hey, I want to start off with a little bit of controversy first. So this is episode 9. And some of you who listened to episode 8 discovered that we had different intro music for that episode. So, and we got some really good feedback from our listeners. And one of the feedback was that the intro music seemed a little scary because we included some thunder. Yeah. But I get it. I understand. The previous music we've been using has been kind of light and very entertaining and really just really good to listen to. And that sort of goes with the tone of the podcast. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who wrote in and let us know what you thought about the music. I went back to the composer, who happens to be my son, who's a music major in college, and I told him that we need some cheery music to go with our podcast. One of the things I'd like to have is original music.
Yeah.
And the music we're currently using is just canned music, and anybody can find it online and use it. And I have a nightmare that everyone's going to be using our music, and then they're going to disassociate the music with our podcast. Anyway, so I went back to Bryce, and I asked him if he could compose a couple of different options. And then what I'd like to do is post those options online and have our listeners vote for the new intro music. What do you think about that plan?
Yeah, it's a great give it to the people, sort of thing. I mean, it doesn't bother me either way. I mean, my daughter likes dancing to the, our previous one as well. But, I mean, yeah. I didn't find the other one to be too scary. But, I mean, I get it. It crashes in, maybe hits a little bit, harder than what you're expecting.
Sure.
But,
well, and we're not one of those, hardcore podcasts.
Yeah.
And so we're ready to more conversational and more, more inspiring, which is kind of the realm we want to occupy. So... but yeah, Laura hums it and while she's driving down the road and different things like that. So,
well, I had people guess it was you doing the intro music before.
Oh, I was singing it. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I'm not that good of a singer. Yeah. I was in choir in high school.
There you go.
So there's a little controversy, and we're going to settle that controversy online. It just may take a little bit because I know Bryce is pretty busy with classes and with the choir performances and things like that. So, well, you have some good news, some little show and tell to tell about without showing.
Yeah, I mean, I can try to do a video a little bit later, which I plan to, and probably see in some of our future bat reps and talk about a little bit. But ended up picking up some measuring sticks finally. Been using a tape measure now for the last year plus.
Welcome to the club.
Right, I know. So it's kind of nice. Actually, just on Etsy there, Warped Mind Games. Just a guy I think is kind of working out with a cutter or printer or something. And so he was able to actually get me a set of 4 to 10 acrylic sticks that are clear. They're a nice, picked up the blue with the whole, again, playing off Spellstorm, I guess, kind of the idea. But he's able to engrave on their Spellstorm miniatures. But
nice. Yeah, it's a nice blue.
Right.
You could use it with your Troll army or your Signar army.
Well, that's my other thought, too, is I was like, well, Trolls, Signar, they both work, I mean, yeah. Minions maybe a little less, but, they're very kind of crisp, clear, clean. Came in a nice tube. The guy was really cool to deal with and everything like that. Also picked up some MDF proxy bases that be also I think using for the King of Coins coming up, but we can chat about that later.
Nice.
Either way, yeah, he was just really cool. I mean, he got him turned out pretty quickly, a lot sooner than I thought for a little bit of a custom work, and was totally open and chill with it. So
yeah, that was super cool. He was able to put Spellstorm miniatures written on him.
Right.
So that's awesome. Well, great. Well, let me ask you a question. as we just kind of get into our episode, have you played any non-War Machine games lately?
As a matter of fact, I have.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah, actually, yesterday, me and a buddy Michael finally got together, and I know Michael, myself, and Jeremiah had been talking for, I don't know how long we've been talking, like 6 months. Like, we need to get together and play Infinity, the game, right? And so finally, I got together with him. We sat down at the table, and I look at him and go, okay, so you probably know more than I do. He looks at me like, have you ever played? I was like, no. He's like, all right, then we're at the same level.
Oh, nice. So you like both went through the rulebook together
Correct.
And figured it out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I thought that was kind of neat.
Did you use the Army Builder online or the app?
No. So we decided to take it the step back, and they have the starter box.
Yeah.
What's this one called? Operation Red. Oh, I can't remember the name of it right now. But basically, they had rules in there where they have the map and they have the terrain that it comes with, little cardboard kind of cutouts. And you can follow along on the guide, and it starts you out very easy, like mission 1 through 6, and you score points depending on how many enemies you are able to take out or how many get you. People aren't familiar with it. It's basically, I think, 28 millimeter sci-fi is what they base it off of.
It's a skirmish level, right?
Yeah, it's like a skirmish level.
Alternating activations?
Correct.
True line of sight?
Yep. And so, you get cover and stuff like that. It's, a lot of shooting. Some other ones have, bows, arrows, plasma guns for all I know. I mean, but like a lot of, heavy machine guns, combi rifles, that sort of thing. So a little bit of sci-fi military. So anyway, mission 1, you kind of jump in and you have it starts you with 3 basic troopers. Like, these would be your basic unit guys. Not great stats, single wounds, they take a hit, they're pretty much out, right? And it eases you into the rules. Now, there's a lot more advanced rules that go further on, but we got through, I think, mission 4 and introducing, bigger and bigger guys, bigger armies, 3 guys to end up being 6 guys, and so you get your 6 activations, and found it went pretty smooth, and it was fun. It was a different takeaway, whereas movement in inches kind of mattered, but not nearly as much, because when your rifle has a range of 8 to 16, you get a certain modifier. You could be roughly close, And so, anyway, it was an interesting experience to finally get to sit down and play with it. The models are neat looking. I enjoy them. The rule set, like I said, was fairly easy once we started getting used to it. The hardest thing that we kept messing up on when you quickly roll the dice was if you're trying to hit somebody, you have to, Price is Right rules. You have to roll a d20 to hit under. So if your target number is a 14, your d20 needs to be less than 14 or equal to. Equal to would be a critical success. Or, most of the times the modifiers came up to be 8s. So I needed to roll less than an 8 on a d20 in order to get a hit. And then flip that around, and he has to roll his armor check, which, is the damage minus the armor, and then roll that or above. So oftentimes it was oh, you killed me. I was like, no, that was actually you rolled up. He's like, oh, that's right, because we got so used to having to try to roll under to hit, or to make dodge roll successes, stuff like that, is everything else you want to be equal to or under. And then when it came to the armor, obviously higher the better. And
they only use d20s in that game.
Yeah. So it was, like I said, it was a different type of rule set. It's good, easy skirmish. I mean, it took us a couple hours to get through those 4 missions. And again, a lot of that was stopping for family kid reasons, and also for just double checking rules. Hey, how does that work again?
I'm excited. That's a game I've been wanting to play, and I have a couple models for it. And so I'm looking forward to getting it on the table. Did you guys use the cardboard terrain?
Yes, we used that cardboard, which actually was pretty decent. I mean, it comes with the set and wasn't too bad.
Nice.
I was going to say the one thing that actually mattered in that game a little bit was facing. So that's why I had the advantage on him. He's used to playing some Warhammer and stuff like that, whereas War Machine, I'm so used to facing matters. Front arc is very important, that I got him on a couple later when we were playing in a little bit of angles. Although that game can get really slanted real fast because your orders are based on how many people you have. So if a few good rolls, he took out 2 of my guys. So I was left 1 to 3. So my turn, I got 1 action. His turn, he got 3 actions. It really slanted. Anyway,
seems like there's a lot of nuance, but it seems like the game is pretty deep.
Yeah, it can go really deep, but then it was also kind of simple. Again, War
Nice.
Machine's on that same realm where it's like, I'm just pushing these guys around. But once you start getting into some of the positioning, how you enter your cover, where the line of sights are.
That's cool. Well, we had our. I haven't played any other miniatures games, but we had our Pandemic Legacy 2 night, and we were in the month of February, and we actually did. We won, and so I'm pretty happy about that because so far Legacy Pandemic Legacy 2 season 2 has been kicking our butts, and then last night was a Starfinder night, and we're really getting into the realm of classic sci-fi. Our team is answering the distress signal of a derelict ship, and so we have a nice cliffhanger because we send a boarding party over. And one of the things they discovered was a bloody handprint on the wall, and so dun dun dun.
Oh, next thing you know, an alien's gonna be popping out of his stomach.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Well, we scan the ship. There's no life forms on board that we can see.
Yeah.
So
someone failed their role there.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is in our last session, the one before last night, we decided that I would be the captain of our ship, which is both good and bad. So we'll see where I take us.
And Starfinder is like based off the Pathfinder, right? Kind of rule set, or
right? Yeah,
but
Pathfinder rule set, but there's some new additions that they've added to it, and I think character creations is spot on. I love the character that I created using the rules, and of course with the story, I think we're having a great time with the story too. Our DM is doing a homebrew thing,
all right,
and the world is pretty diverse and big, and so yeah, it's nice. So, how about any War Machine games? Have you played any War Machine games?
Yeah, so I participated in the Scramblers at Root and Board to break open their new space there.
Nice,
and it was cool that they have that extra space out there, and. It had to wait a little bit. We had 3 people ready to go, and then we kind of sat and waited a little bit. Fourth person, sorry, speak there, finally showed up, and we were able to get a pretty cool game in. It ended up being myself along with JC, Abby, and Jeff. So, of course, I was like already going into that going, oh, great, this is how I'm.
That's some stiff competition.
Yeah, I might as well hand over my money. I'm out. And it wound up kind of cool. I ended up facing off with Abby, so I was running Madrak 1, so Scramblers, obviously 4 people, and you pretty much face off, and then winners face off, and the losers can face off if they feel like it.
Yeah, it's a fun format. It's a quick little tournament, and and the winner gets the buy-in, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. It was a winner take all, so it was a $5 buy-in. Winner got a $20 gift card, and it's a single list. So that's kind of the little twist to it too. Is I just went up with a Madrak 1 list that I had. It's a little bit of twist on the classic Madrak 1, but figured jumping back into Trolls here, figured this out. Kind of, it's a good caster to kind of do that with. And Abby ended up bringing a Grim 1 Storm of the North with a Sea King. So I was feeling a little bit sad about my champs trying to take down a Sea King when he had like Raiders and everything else in front too. And I ended up going second, which is again a little bit rough in the troll world trying to get that Krellstone up, and I miscalculated his bear's threat range by 1 inch, and I really should have feeded. This is my classic thing. I kind of get ahead and I forget to feed all the time. Like if I would have done that, I could have prevented some stuff. So his bears come in, wreck some havoc. I'm able to take care of them, but then his Sea King was able to get somewhat close enough, spitting that acid, scuttling crabs, doing damage. So my champs are getting whittled away. And again, my next turn, I forget to feed again. So I don't heal my champs either that are all like beat up down to like 1 box, right? Because that's spreading damage around. Except for the one, I think he rolled like a 12 damage after armor. Like check. Oh my. Yeah, so I let him tough check. And that would have prevented the Sea King from also charging in and threshing. I mean, because I had taken care of the bears. I had scored a couple points, contested his, so I got a slight scenario lead there, going second, which was nice. So I was able to, I should say it was on Mirage. The Scrambler runs just 1 map, whole time. Everyone's running the same scenario, right? So a little bit more back and forth. I was losing attrition pretty hard, but I was able to keep pushing scenario a bit. And at one point, I went for it pretty hard with my long riders in that list, charged through Burning Earth Cloud, got lit on fire, rolled the damage roll, took no damage because I was under the stone technically at the time where the fire damage would have taken place.
Nice.
I charge in on Volca. I'm boosted everything right. I hit him and I do no damage. Like, ooh,
ouch.
That's no good. And my second one kind of comes in and does basically the same thing, just takes out like a raider. I'm like, oh great, that's not so good. So of course Volca murders them the next turn. Right. He's able to clear that zone, but I think it was turn 5. I ended up edging him 6-1 off of a couple long shots. Like one, my bomber, I was 12 inches away. I was able to just get within 12 inches, chuck 2 shots, boosted them both, was able to destroy the objective, luckily.
Nice.
And then I was able to clear his flag using like everything I could, or my flag, I guess, the nearest flag, everything I could to finally clear it. And then I got him 6-1. And we were both down to, I think I had like 3 or 4 minutes on my clock and he was underneath 10. Like,
that's a good win.
Yeah,
that's a good win.
That was a brutal, hard win. So then I ended up facing against a Jeff who was running, it was Grimkin, King of Nothing, which again, caster I hadn't really faced. And I went first on that turn, which was all right. I was able to move up. He was running kind of the non-classic Grimkin. I was ready for a Beast Brick, right? And he had like Madcaps and the Hollow Man and the little dudes riding the toy horses. I can't remember what they're called. Nayslayers.
Yeah.
And those things hit a lot harder than I thought they were going to. I aggressively pushed up way too much. He wiped out so many things. And again, it's one of those where it was just that fight back and forth for CP. I think we had him on like 3-2. I had him on CP. We were down. He was, again, starting to get that attrition because those madcaps just blowing up in my face. And again, I'm forgetting defeat. Oh, so there goes my healing. There eliminates his charges.
Did you ever feat?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, both games I did end up feeding. The first game was after Grim had done his feed. I had to do my feed in just pure remembrance of countering. And then This one I finally feeded like turn 3 or 4. Again, it was just bad. And so that one was, again, a lot of back and forth. And he started getting me in the attrition. He was starting to take over. So I was running out of contesting pieces. Meanwhile, he could throw like 2 Gorehounds in my circular zone, and my stone had to charge one to try to take it out. That didn't work out so well. But I took my Mauler and went to attack his Cage Rager. And this is kind of that unfortunate moment where we're both at like, I think I was at 7 minutes. He was at like 9 minutes. And because I had the little bit of CP lead, I could kind of push it a little bit. So I go in, and he's looking at his list, and he goes, well, good game. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's confusing.
Yeah, I was like, what just happened? He's like, well, I guess I'm so used to playing Dreamer. I have this Cage Rager on the board, and he's not in my list. So it's kind of a hollow win because that one was going to be really tight. Like, he was probably going to start edging that one out real quick, but being an awesome gentleman he was, he shook hands there. It was also like 5:15. The store closes at 5. We were kind of like, well, we got to wrap this up anyway. So I was joking with him, man, you couldn't notice this a half hour ago. But it was really neat for him to, just kind of admit it, and
that's a good catch.
And shake hands and just kind of be like, well, that was a learning experience. And so we talked very briefly as we were packing up models, and I wanted to talk to him more about the games too. But same with Abby, I wanted to chat more about our game, but we literally had to jump in. Like I was scrambling models from just one half of the table to the other map. Yeah. That was set up ready to play on. So I was just like tossing models on. So my first turn, it was weird putting everything in. But yeah, both were incredible grinders of a game, and a lot of good experience out of them. So, I mean, I'm now 2-0 in 2019, so
nice.
See how long that lasts.
Ozzy and I went to the Scramblers, but the way that worked out, we couldn't. There wasn't like the right number of people at the right time, and then we didn't have the time to stay all day, And so we just ended up playing each other, and so I was running Zakar because I'm all in on scoring right now, and Zakar is not a big fan of Mulg, and so Mulg he kind of basically walked around the building and with his 2-inch melee just took care of business.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh well. That was bad.
Big Hammer does that. I was going to think maybe Mulg was like burning his arcane vortexes and just kicking you off.
Oh, I don't like that either, but that never really came into play. So I got assassinated. So, and then, I got a casual game in last week with Eli.
Nice.
And once again, running Zakar. And my goal is to play a certain number of games with Zakar before I pick up a new caster, a new warlock, and so that's my goal as I'm getting into Scorn and learning the army and kind of learning all of the tools. And so I played Iona, I think, in Devourer's Host, I think is what Eli was running.
Okay.
And that list is very fast and very scary. And I thought that turn 1 and 2, I thought I was weathering the assault pretty okay. I didn't know what was coming. Is probably the right way to say it. Yeah. And so he was able to go up on scenario really quickly because he just pushes everyone out. There's no way to get in, and I would contest and lose models, and we'd peace trade along the way or whatever. And then when we both determined that it was late and we wanted to go home, we kind of talked out the last few actions of his turn to kind of determine kind of all the things that he would have done, if he had the time. And so it was an assassination loss, but he was in a situation where he had he was up on scenario as well. Like it was total domination is what it was.
Gotcha.
But for me, that was my third game against Circle, I think. And so my goal, I told Eli up front right away. I said, I want to learn from this. And so I want you to be explicit about what you're doing and talk to me why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so win or lose, I won because I learned something new. Mm-hmm. And of course I'm learning my army for the first time. That was only my second 75-point match with Zakar. Because before this, I'd been doing the Journeyman League steps.
Yeah.
And so my first game was against Ozzy on the Scrambler Day, and then my second game was against Eli. And so I am winless in 2019. So did you, let's see, yesterday was Quan Kong. Did you participate in that?
No.
Yeah.
There's no way with just so much else going on, and that's like I said, I ended up playing Infinity, but it worked because I was able to get the wife and kids.
That's different, when the family's involved. Sundays are hard for me. I just don't do it Sundays.
But I was just actually thinking about that when you said Circle, because I think James won that with Circle, right? So Circle's in a good spot, I guess.
Yeah. So before we get to our main topic, one of the things that I've been doing for a while now is I keep a diary of all the games that I play, and I record who I play, what their army. Usually I just record caster and theme, and then I keep track of the CPs and the army points killed and things like that. And then I also keep track of whether I'm first or second player and what the win or loss condition was. And it's a lot of fun to go back and kind of review where you've been. And so I started doing, so I keep a written diary, but then I started using Warm Horde's Battle Reporter, which is an online app. It's an app you can get on your phone, but you can also use it as a web browser. And a solid 45% of my games end in assassination. And so in this case, I lose more games than I win right now.
Yeah.
So, but and the majority of them end in either me being assassinated or me assassinating my opponent. And a slightly less majority is a loss on clock. And so I actually, my opponents have lost on, I've won on clock 9 times, and I've lost on clock 15 times, for example.
Yeah.
And so I'm still, I only win about 40% of my games, and so everything kind of fits in that range. And then of course the smaller number is scenario. So I've won on scenario 4 times, and those have been some of my most favorite games ever, right? And then I've lost to scenario only 5 times. So one of the things that the Captain Ron has instilled in me is a really aggressive scenario play.
Yeah.
And so I don't lose on scenario too often, and I also don't win on scenario too often. But my win-loss situation is either going to be clock or assassination typically. And so my longest win streak is 4 games.
Nice.
And my longest losing streak is 6 games. And I'm currently in the middle of that losing streak. And so the next game that I play, if I lose, the streak continues.
No.
But one of the things I noticed, so I've played 9 games with Zakar, and including the Journeyman Leagues and the 2 75-point games that I've played. And all 9 of them have ended in assassination. I've won 3 of them, and I've lost 6 of them. And so I'm looking forward to winning or losing in another way.
Right. So would you say that's showing you maybe a little aggressive with your caster there, or?
Oh, well, okay, so there isn't a lot of things in my list that protects me from shooters.
Okay.
And so, like, losing this to Striker, for example, and different things like that. And so I think part of it is list construction. As I build more models, I have more toys to play with in my lists. And so, like, for example, for the first time, I have the caster attachment now that I'm using, and then I'm going to, my masters list includes a bronze back.
Okay.
And so, which is going to help me with fury management. So those kinds of things will be helpful. So I used to always build with Valkyries, and then for a moment I was taking them out, and then now I think I'm gonna have to add them back in.
Yeah, those shield guards are nice.
They're really helpful. So, but it's good. One of the things that the app does is it tells you how you're doing the last 6 months versus how you're doing overall. And so overall, my win rate is about 39-40%. Okay. But in the last 6 months, it's dropped. And so the big question that I have for myself is, does that mean that I'm actually getting worse as a player? Or is the drop in win rate, percentage-wise anyway, is that associated with me trying to learn a new army? Or is it also might include my hiatus into minions and Cephalix. Yeah. There was a couple of events where I played just minions and Cephalix, and I lost all those games, and so that doesn't really help either. And so when you play something sort of out of, like, you've been playing something for a while, and then you just jump over, and then you jump back, and the jump over wasn't very good for me.
There you go. No, I was saying I think that's what a lot of it would be is, some guys can jump around the armies and pick them up and know them well enough. And if you're still learning, like you said, now you're jumping into Scorn, and your options, your build options are a little bit more limited, so maybe your lists aren't as optimized. But now also you were so much playing Khador, and even in Mercenaries, you're like, oh, hey, okay, I know how to play War Machine, and then you jump to Hordes.
Oh, yeah, just learning the Fury mechanic alone is an exercise in itself.
Right, and it creates a whole another aspect of, wait, what do I got to calculate all this now? Oh, man.
Yeah.
So
I don't have visions of grandeur. I know that I'll never be a War Machine weekend winner or anything like that. I do enjoy having some wins, and so I think that's why I keep the diary. Is in the long run, I just want to be a good, strong player, and win or lose, right? And so I want to know what my army does, and as I play more opponents, I want to learn what my opponents' armies do. So that's sort of just kind of my personal goal, which is why one of my 2019 goals is just to play more games, and I have a target number I'm reaching for. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you've inspired me. I need to start writing mine down, at least for this year, and hopefully at least bat a 500 throughout the year would be kind of a cool,
Yeah, that'd be a nice goal.
Yeah.
So we want to maybe actually this would be a good time to maybe transition into our main topic. The main topic is choosing what to play, and we encounter that a lot with games. Just how do you choose a game to play?
Yeah.
And then within the game, how do you choose what to play within the game? And so why don't we just have that big broad stroke first? Dan, how do you decide on a game that you want to play? Like what kind of things, what kind of factors do you look for, or what grabs you?
Yeah, so overall, it's mainly what can I play? For example, including that is one, do I have time for? Or two, what are some friends playing? Who are people around me playing? That's some of my bigger factors, right? I mean, I like hanging out with my friends and making new friends. And for example, that's how I got into War Machine. Was a buddy, like I said, hit me up, said, here's a Signor starter, go at it. And then finding out, hey, Jeremiah plays, Ron plays, like some other guys I know. Okay, well, I can get this going. Then I find out about the time that it takes, and that kind of hampers some of my game playing, but still try to get it in there. Unlike HeroClix, where it took us some time, but 3 hours I get like 3 games in, right? Maybe 4 hours with some travel.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of friends were playing that. It looked neat, looked fun. That's the big aspect of it too. Is it something that kind of challenges? There's something I can maybe grow to. I mean, if everyone is playing Connect 4, there's not much of a skill curve eventually at Connect 4 or tic-tac-toe.
I don't know. I'm pretty mean at tic-tac-toe.
Well, all right. But there's not as much variety, right?
Yeah. I think you're onto something right there. I think a lot of times our first filter that kind of goes through our brain as we're trying to evaluate whether or not to play a game is who do we know that's already playing it, or someone that we know introduced us to the game. And that's how I started with HeroClix.
Yeah.
I was working at the insurance company, and a coworker said, "Hey, I've got the starter box. Would you be interested?" And 10 years of my life went away.
Right.
I mean, the guy had no idea what he was doing. And then, and so just like with War Machine, a coworker introduced you to it by giving you a box, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of games like that, because I think we're in a golden age of games. We can walk into any game store in our city, and we can find fantastic looking games that would be interesting for us to play, and there would be, any number of reasons to pick them up.
Yeah.
But in the back of your mind, you're going, okay, who would play this with me? And I think that's sort of the first filter that I have. So I'm proud to be one of the persons who helped you dive into War Machine, by the way. Yeah. There are other filters though too.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes just finding something on sale, and I'll try this out. You never know. Like Guardian Games has a used shelf, mm-hmm. and there's all kinds of things get traded in, and you can get exposure by buying a game pretty inexpensively,
right.
and then learning that you really like that game and you want to play that game more, right?
Yep, exactly. And that's how I've picked up some actually from Guardian. I think I picked up like Illuminati, which I had remembered back in the day, and I'm like, I don't know anyone that wants to play this right now.
It's a Steven Jackson game, right?
Yeah. But I know I kind of like it, and eventually it's going to make it on my shelf, right? Or we'll bust it out sometime. But it's cheap enough to grab and want to play again.
Well, I did that recently. I picked up the Godfather board game. I think it's put out by Simon, I think. Tons of amazing little plastic miniatures. They're modern dressed, and so I can use them in certain RPG games. And we're thinking about running a Delta Green or something, and so I can, depending on what time period we use, I can use those models, right? And so plus it'd be just fun to paint them, and but I got that game really inexpensively, and with the goal of introducing it to people to play with me, knowing that no one currently plays it.
There you go. Yeah, that's like I said, a great way to do it. I was gonna say is another. That's not always the most inexpensive, but Kickstarter. that might be another thing where it's like, hey, here's something new, and it's going to be a limited run, or maybe not be in stores. You want to be a part of this sort of thing, and like I've talked about previously, that Kickstarter kind of it did a good job of grabbing a lot of my money last year, probably more than I should have let it, but I went down that Kickstarter hole and following games like Chronicle X that is still, they're a few months behind, but they say they're play testing it. It's made by Archon, and so I'm really excited to get that. Who am I going to play with it right now? I don't know, but it reminds me of XCOM back in the day, playing that, and that I'd hang out with friends and chat with, and then so this is kind of that on a board game scale, and it really appealed to me. So even then, I guess it's one of those things. It wasn't on sale. I don't have any friends playing it, but I'm sure going to try to introduce it to a few friends because I enjoy it.
See, that's what it takes. So I found, Guardian Games has their IRS tax sale at the end of the year or whatever, and so down on the bottom shelf, tucked away behind all these things, I found the 2-player starter set for Drop Zone Commander. And so I took it out, and I've been wanting to play this game for a long time because I listen to other podcasts, and they talk about that game a lot. And so I went over to the table, and I pulled everything out, and I went through each component individually, going against the list, and making sure that every piece was there. And then when I discovered that every piece was there, I said, okay, I'm buying it. And plus, it was already marked down because it was used, right? And it was additionally marked down because of the additional sale. And I was like, okay, cool. I got this 2-player starter, and now I need a sci-fi nerd to play this game with, and done. I already know who I'm going to play with. So we're gonna set it up, and we're gonna play, and it's gonna be good. So I think some of us in the War Machine community are feeling that with Monster Apocalypse. As more releases start coming out, there's more interest among War Machine players. Oh, hey, anybody else playing Monpoc?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about playing Monpoc?
Yes and no. I really don't have the time for it, nor should I really do the shelf space dedicated to it. But the sheer aspect is, I was looking at the aliens, and the aesthetic, kind of cool. I don't really even know much of the rule set, just kind of looking, aesthetically wise, and
giant monsters destroying buildings and other giant monsters.
Trying to protect said building or destroying other buildings. Yeah. So, and it looks fun. It looks kind of like their sculpting's neat, and I just more so almost want to try out a paint scheme. Amongst anything else, I have a paint scheme in my head that I want to put onto something, but it won't. I don't think it would fit really well on any War Machine. Maybe Ret or Convert. No, not even that. I don't know. So Ret, actually, if I ever pick up Ret and start playing it, I have a whole nother paint scheme I want to go that route.
Yeah.
But I just look at them and go, it could be fun. Again, it's a skirmish type deal. Already know, War Machine, so hopefully they're doing a good job on the new Monpoc, which sounds like it's catching a little bit of fire, but
I'm on the Monpoc Discord, and all I'm hearing is really good things.
Right.
So
that's kind of encouraging. But anyway, that's, if I was looking at that game and said, okay, how am I going to play this? I don't really know many people playing it right now, although some would. Like I said, we just say it, and 3 or 4 other people will buy it and want to play.
Well, here's the thing. You touched on another reason to get into a game, and that is just for the hobby side of it. And so Dimension Games, they make a game called Twisted, and it's a sci-fi Victorian fantasy skirmish level game, and it's kind of a weird place to be because there's some steampunk elements to it, which kind of gets covered by War Machine. There's the Victorian elements to it, which kind of gets covered by Malifaux. Yeah. Twisted occupies a really interesting space in the miniatures world, and so I don't know how they're doing globally with the game, but they recently actually they started a new model line where they're doing 54 millimeter models that are not designed to be played. They're just designed to be painted. Okay. And so some people get into games just to not to play the game, but to paint the models. And that 54 millimeter scale is an interesting scale too, because then you have games like Judgment, which is a MOBA style, skirmish, a miniature game, and they're at the 54 millimeter Mark II, and those models are beautiful. And you buy the 2-player starter, you're only getting 3 models because each model is in itself valuable.
Yeah.
I guess you don't need it for the gameplay. Like to have, you can get away with a small handful of models, and you can be really selective about what you choose. Judgment's actually a very interesting game because, as we're talking about how do we choose what to play, sometimes we get hamstringed into playing certain things that we don't want to play because we want to play something else. Like if we're playing, for example, if we're choosing an army or a theme force and we want to play this specific thing, unfortunately, to play that, we also have to play these other things.
Yeah.
And so I'll get more into that in a second. I want to finish my thought on Judgment. And so the way that Judgment works is apparently there are no factions. You literally just field the models you want to field based on the game you're playing. And so you can truly mix and match, and it's all just personal preference, which I think is absolutely freeing. So it looks like a fun game to explore.
Yeah.
But before we get into my little ramble there that I just dropped a bomb on people, but there's like a real sort of existential reason, to get into a game, right? Just the idea of something like a love affair that we have with a aesthetic or with a certain time point in history, and or something, and so a game comes out and we just have to have it. Is there any game that fits that niche for you?
Like kind of as I mentioned, that Chronicle X just brings me to a cool place of like, semi-futuristic aliens versus, the human resistance world going at it, and that nostalgia pull to it. Other than that, Infinity as well, just kind of that neat little sci-fi-ish skirmish little Neo type world. I mean, when you get a nice universe around it, it really does help. War Machine, I didn't know the fluff kind of before it. It was more of like, okay, like I said, here's someone, you got these robots, you got, magic in there, you've got all these different mixed arms forces, you've got these different factions, there's a lot of variety and fun.
Yeah.
Really pick up what's your personality, and then kind of learning about the world on it, and, the fluff does help. I'm not always kind of that, hey, give me all the lore type of guy, but it does definitely help bring up a world.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you probably just threw down a game and said, hey, here's some really cool looking miniatures, but we have really no story behind it, they're just gonna fight each other, maybe it won't hold the appeal as much.
That's true. The lore gives you that certain depth. Yeah, I think there are some people who like Cthulhu is something that really just captures people. Mm-hmm. And so there are some games or like some RPGs and some miniature stuff that people will just automatically pick up because they have to have it, and so my friend Kevin is really into Cthulhu. And and if I told him about the Cthulhu like Monpok force, right, he would probably jump right in and both feet and not even look for a landing spot. He would just dive in, right? Yeah, I feel that way about certain things too. Like I like the idea of something, and it's the idea that just really captures me. So like for Malifaux, the thing that really captured my attention was the cards mechanic. And so being able to have a control hand and then being able to cheat fate and sort of manipulate the outcome of a skirmish, all of that just really appealed to me. And so the trick with Malifaux then is, okay, how do I find a faction or a set of models that I can comfortably play and that I can really get behind and play while also using this awesome mechanic that I want. Some games are there's a conflict there. You like one aspect of it but not everything. Mm-hmm. And that's how a lot of games kind of show up for me. Very few games actually tick all the boxes. So War Machine is one of those games that sort of tick all the boxes. I can enjoy it casually. I can enjoy it competitively. I like the lore of some of the things. I like the models. I really like force construction, like how to build an army. and with my background as a chess coach, the whole notion of a warlock or a warcaster getting assassinated, puts you in a checkmate situation. Intellectually, like, I can ascend to that. Like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Versus another game where if you lose your general or you lose your commander, but your forces can still act on the battlefield, also makes sense to me, but in an entirely different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I was gonna go with that as, like you said, it's kind of that option of what really appeals to you, and as you mentioned, like Cthulhu, for example, there's a very evilish force kind of dictated with that, whereas you kind of maybe have some heroes, some villains type sides, which we didn't even talk about Star Wars during this whole thing, had we not?
Oh, I know.
That's a light versus dark.
Well, this morning I was listening to Paint All the Minis with Dan Adam, and he has this series that he calls Why I Love, and he'll have a guest on and he'll just talk about a game and why they love that game. And so his most recent guest was talking about Star Wars Legion, and so I listened to an hour and a half of this guy just vomit all this love for this game, and how much he loves it. And so there's a lot of fandom there with Star Wars. So actually, let's jump into that. So let's pick game XYZ. Okay, it doesn't matter what game that's out there. Do you generally lean good guys or bad guys?
I'm generally by default kind of the good guy. It's just the way I've always, maybe not even consciously thought about it, but D&D usually like floating towards the clerics or the paladins or the monks, or not just murdering people. Mass Effect, when I played that, I always seemed to make the Paragon choices. The lighter, brighter side. I think Star Wars, Old Republic was a similar way. Like, even sometimes just making my decisions always seem to be kind of on the more good path. So I think I'm more of the good guy factions. I guess even when I look at War Machine, Signar, maybe they're not considered the good guys, but they're kind of the good guys. They're kind of the good guys.
But you play the true good guys.
Yeah.
The trolls.
Yeah. And then you got the poor trolls who get hit. So always that protagonist type style, right? Or Pan-Oceanic and Infinity. Yeah, I mean, I float towards the good guys, I guess.
So you and I would make a great pair. And whenever a 2-player starter box comes out on some random game, we should split it, and I'll just take the bad guy faction, and you take the good. I mean, I remember. So my first miniatures event ever was the old Star Wars minis game. It was I can't remember. So 3.5 had a miniatures handbook and had like rules for how to play like a miniatures game using their miniatures or whatever, and then eventually evolved into a Dungeons & Dragons miniatures game. And so every miniature had a card associated with it and actions and things like that, and you played on this gridded board. Well, then they had the Star Wars license, and they had the So anyway, all that to say is I ran Vader all the time, and and so when we play X-wing with my boys, I'm running the Imperial side, and jumped into Kador when I played War Machine, and now I'm playing Scorn. Yeah. I mean, I have a Cephalix army. I mean, come on, there's no. Yeah, that's where I'm at in the world, and my Warhammer armies are chaos, and which I guess depends on how you look at that. Could be good or bad, but
right, everyone's the hero in their own story, right?
Yeah, sure, exactly. So okay, all right. Sometimes it's helpful just to kind of know where you are, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start a new game and you start learning like where you're gonna fall. The good versus bad is sort of a quick binary rubric, right? But then there's like nuances. So you start having, army types and factions. And so when the other side, when I kickstarted the other side, they have 4 initial offerings for army types. And so you had to basically kind of 2 Earthside armies, which generally could be the good guys, I guess, and then 2 like other side armies, which I guess could be the bad guys. Perspective, withstanding, and but the 2 factions, the 2 other side factions, play completely differently from each other, And so when you're looking at army types, what kinds of things do you look for? Like, what's your rubric? How do you settle on what you want to play?
Yeah, that really, I think, depends kind of game to game. The reason of just War Machine in general, when I was kind of doing that, there's like a War Machine quiz out there, right? And kind of taking that.
Yeah, for those of you that want to take that, it's on the allnewwar.com website.
Yep, and that one's, it's kind of cool. I mean, you can kind of cheat the questions if you already kind of know what you want to do. And I actually really was leaning initially on that one, kind of Rhett and Signar is where it was kind of guiding me. Both mainly because they're kind of, that technology faction, I guess, always has the appeal to me a little bit. I mean, which could be why, Iron Man's pretty cool and, those type of guys, right? Batman with his gadgets, right? And so that usually appeals, again, when you look at it, kind of that's aesthetically, I guess, a little bit on that aspect too, but just having those options, or they both also have seemingly a wide range, gun line versus melee. And when I'm not really new to a game, maybe that's just kind of my default going into, is that kind of feel like, let me feel that out because I'll probably enjoy that, and then see what the rest of the game has to offer.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think when I first started playing my Khador army, I think the first kind of build I was building for was like this Winter Guard army, and which is kind of a range thing. And but my favorite list by far is a Jaws of the Wolf list that has all melee jacks, and just want to get in your face and and punch some things. Right. And big fan of melee forces.
Axe to face, I think, is
Axe to face is the prescription.
Yeah, and that's when I started playing and then learning, like, man, melee's pretty good. That's why I played Gators a bit, and now kind of into Trolls. They have those two factions especially have a much stronger melee presence, I think, than they do ranged.
And what a lot of game developers are doing now is even though like a certain army type will have an identity associated with it, and they actually are kind of creating sub-identities. So in War Machine we have themes, but like in Warhammer we have keywords that you can build your force around now, and so you can start to play characters that go together or models that go together, both story-wise and then functionally on the board too. They have they may have rules that support one another, and things like that. And so I think when you start diving deep into a game, I think that's when you start to see the depth and the richness of a game, and you start seeing where you can really kind of just find your niche if you really wanted to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. My problem has always been when I jump in, I kind of like to jump in. Yeah. So before I even really played as many games or really figured out my niche of what I really enjoy, I ended up buying tons of models or figures for something I think I'll enjoy, rather than like, hey, this is this is where I'm gonna kind of be going,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I can appreciate that a little bit. That's why I love the slow grow that I'm doing with Scorn, because every time I build a model and I put it on the table, I'm learning something new, and then that would sort of affect what my next purchase is going to be, if you will. Yeah. War Machine is funny. I mentioned earlier how I like how we have the Warlocks and the Warcasters, because even within an army and even within a theme, so we're kind of narrowing down the focus, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on which Warlock or which Warcaster you use, could tailor your list completely in a completely different way, And so I want to talk about how do you choose what to play based on that sort of the identity or the persona of a character you're using. My big analogy that I'm using here is like Street Fighter. I love Zangief, and I pretty much only play Zangief. And then if I get beat up too much, then I'll switch over to like Dudley, who has an awesome counter. But both those guys are melee, right? I don't throw anything except for people, and and so my whole goal when I face people in Street Fighter with Zangief is just to be the best Zangief player they've ever faced, right? And so But in that same way, there are some people who play War Machine who I only play Butcher, or whatever, whatever their caster is. I am not that I'm a Ret player, I'm a Ron player, right? There are players like that. So let's kind of narrow the focus a little bit. We talked about army types, we talked about theme types. Now we're talking about the leader of our force. Do you feel that same pull, like you want to focus on a certain caster, or like what do you think?
A little bit. I just also want to tie it with yours with Zangief. He may be a bad guy, but does that not make him a bad guy?
I'm Zangief. I'm bad guy.
Exactly.
I love that movie.
Yeah. So when I come down to that, the casters, maybe there's some appeal on some of them. Obviously, ones that are a little bit objectively more powerful than some others. But I also have an appeal towards like underdogs. I mean, maybe it's a slight segue, but I almost like them all.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of why I actually just got my last Trollbloods caster. So I now have all the Trollbloods casters to choose from. I like options. That's part of my problem is I like too many options. I can like too many things. And so there are obviously, like I said, some casters that just stick out to you a little bit more than others.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about that. When's the last time you ran Connie?
Yeah, and never.
Okay. So there are even limitations to
yeah. I might have some that, but I mean maybe some of that too is playing the games, and with Connie is more of like, okay, we're waiting for that, better theme force, better army, and that's just it. Is they pick up. Maybe that's why I like options too. Is in the meta as we're shifting through, you can pick up a different caster or warlock that more fits that. I do find myself leaning though, towards to some. Most of the time, it's toolboxy is again my general default is kind of that generalist style because I like to be able to maybe take it all with some options instead of just be like, hey, I'm gonna totally box skew this. Unlike my Maylock list was just. Or the typical Maylock list out there is just a bunch of boxes that say go ahead and chew through this, right?
I like what you're going with there. I'm experiencing that right now with my Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I actually have a lot of different tools within my main deck to deal with certain things on the field, but then even my extra deck deals with a whole other assortment of tools, and every time I play the game, I can do something. I mean, you have to draw the right card. Yeah. But having the options, to do something is actually pretty powerful. So I appreciate this approach that you have, finding the tools.
Yeah, and that's where War Machine is kind of cool. Is that you can basically have one of those casters, and then you can have like your, if you know the game well enough, you look at your opponent and go, well, I have this over here to deal with, Tharn or Primal Terrors or whatever have you. And you can play that, again, feeding into kind of the options. But there are some, like I said, casters that I just generally reach for more than others. When I'm talking about Gators, Caliban, I want to make him work. Like, he's cool, and I think he could. He's just didn't really feel there. Like, and at the moment, I'm maybe not the most experienced person to just come up with that underdog list, right? Sit there and make some caster like, what was I just going to say? Everyone always makes fun of too. It's talking, wow, you're just going to have to edit this right out. I know you won't edit it, but that's okay.
It's not Connie. It was another caster.
No, not Connie. The other...
the one that also does for Crix and for Signar.
Yeah,
he gets a lot of heat too.
Why can't I think of his name right now? Anyway, that's probably why I see that just speaks to it too. I have him there, and so, but again, I've wanted to build a list with him, and I kind of started, and then I just can't do it. Like I just look and I go, hey, look at this guy over here, runs it so much better. Like,
Well, and I actually experience that right now because I'm limited to playing Zakar only. And everyone tells me that he's just a weaker version of Morgul 2, and I should just jump into Morgul 2 next. And I understand that. I mean, that makes sense to me. But I have my own limitations on how I'm developing and getting into the game.
Right, and some of them can just feel better than others, too. If they have a certain spell that you really like, And again, that broader scope of just, play what's kind of fun, even though there might be one that optimizes it slightly better. But
Yeah.
your play style might be a little bit different. Like when I was playing Trenchers, I was charging up, and one of the guys I was playing was like, you play like this, you'd probably be better in Trolls. Like Trolls will do this probably better.
Yeah.
And that's one reason that kind of helped me get that direction too. Is my play style was almost impacting to what faction and so forth I should
Yeah.
play. Like,
Yeah. Well, and you can only get there by having experience, right?
yeah.
Yeah. By the way, his name is Sturgis.
Yeah, there you go. Sturge Fest even, they had
Yeah,
that.
they
That's
came
it.
back, so.
Yeah.
Well, I want to sort of wind this conversation down. There's one topic that is kind of near and dear to my heart, and we call it faction ADD, and I think it could be game ADD in the sense that people bounce back and forth between games, but also faction ADD where people bounce back and forth between factions, and so and it sort of has. I think it has a negative vibe in the community. Like people who kind of do that seem to be looked down upon by some folks, and I kind of want to dispel some of that negative thoughts, because ultimately we're playing games, and I think every one of us is entitled to having fun on our own terms. You know what I mean? But there's some real limitations to bouncing back and forth between things, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it can be from rule sets to cost to just perception to space.
Yeah. There's the real material logistics, right? Yeah. I was watching some videos on YouTube, and every once in a while I'll scroll down and I'll read what the trolls say, as they're commenting on it. And someone wrote this, and I want us to interact with this quote real quick. The quote is, "My bad habit is not being able to stick to a single army long enough to get more than 2 units painted." And so obviously there's a lot wrapped up in that confession. Let's interact with that a little bit. What thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah. Either someone really likes jumping around, which could just be learning stuff or not finding a place, or 2, maybe they just really don't like painting. But I mean, 2 units of something could be fairly intensive to it, right? But I joke a little bit there, but that's kind of a tough one where some people can feel that way and some people feel absolutely opposite. Like we've mentioned before, we know some that are just purists in a faction practically. They kind of maybe tried 1 or 2 here or there, but they just ride one faction really most of the time. Whereas me, I'm a little bit different. I'm trying to set myself a goal of playing certain faction for at least solidly one length of time, and I like painting them. So that's part of my opposite problem is I do more units of painting than sometimes they'll see the table worth of time put into them. They'll see more time on the paint table than on the game table.
But they'll be ready for you when it's time.
Exactly. When I go back around to them because I'm skipping around. So with that one, I mean, I get where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I don't think this, and I think the sentiment there isn't necessarily focused on the painting.
Yeah.
I think the sentiment has to deal with the shiny, right? Squirrel, kind of thing, and all of us experience that on some level, in the hobby, and to some of us to a greater degree. And I don't want to shame folks who bounce back and forth. I mean, I think I'm a terrible person because I want to play all the games, just bar none. I just want to play all the games, and so in my process of playing all the games, I realize that I can never actually go very deep and on a lot of them because I'm getting a cursory experience, So like we did, the Open the Box episode 1 was on 7 Wonders because I played a million games of 7 Wonders. It's one of the few games I've played a lot of, right? And so I can talk about it, but I've only played a handful of, XYZ game, whatever game that's out there. And so for me, I think I want everyone to recognize that they can have fun on their own terms, but also when they're going through the process of deciding what to play, think about who they're playing with. Think about the costs associated with it and getting into the game. Think about the shelf space you have for that game alongside of all the other games that you wouldn't be playing when you're playing this new game. You know what I mean? And same thing with armies, right? I think one of the greatest things I did during Christmas break was actually organizing my shelf and organizing my little closet shelf. And one, I had to organize all this podcast equipment that I have, but the other side of it was all the miniatures that I have, and the different games, and then in getting them into a position where mentally I could see them and mentally go, okay, I'm going to play this soon, have it readily available rather than deep in the back darkness somewhere. Yeah. Like I have a small Legion force, I'm nowhere near playing Legion, and so they're in a box in the garage. And it's a great place for them, unless I want to trade or sell them to get other Scorn models, which I probably do because I have some lists that I want to play. And so, so those are things that every player kind of thinks about.
Yeah.
Right. So, one more idea, and then we'll wrap up. When you're having the conversation with a new player, how do you encourage them which game to get into? And and why, ever had those conversations?
Yeah, and I think that harkens back to the overarching conversation of will you have time to play it? Who will you play it with? A lot of questions. Again, I always ask myself when getting something is like, okay, can I afford this? Am I going to use it? And do I have the space for it? Type of thing, right? Do I want it? And if the answer is yes to a lot of those, then yeah. Go ahead, pick it up. Most games, if you enjoy it well enough, you'll probably find some friends to eventually play it. And
some of us are naturally good at building community around us, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, when I bought the starter box, the battle box for War Machine, my very first question I asked Ron is, if I buy this, will you play it with me? And he said yes. And he's held through to his promise.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was gonna say that's just kind of my general is you got them to there, and if they want to go to War Machine, then the whole faction talk is another thing. Like we kind of covered, what's your flavor, what's your play style? Do you like being the good guy, the bad guy? Do you like melee? Do you like distance? Do you what do you like?
Right. Yeah, I'm sort of going down that road right now with Jesse, talking about historicals. So I've got some 15 millimeter Byzantiums that I picked up, and depending on which rule set I use, will depend on, I guess, what kind of base I put them on and things like that. And it's kind of fun to explore those questions, because I think that's sort of like the epitome of miniatures when you are your own creator, and then be able to say, I made this force and I'm going to use this force and I can use it in this rule set or that rule set or whatever. So that's great. I think this was a good discussion. It's good. Just to kind of just to share with our listeners kind of where we are at in the game. Both of us experienced a huge explosion last year, and in 2018, and it feels like in 2019, both you and I are willing to focus a little bit more on a few things, and maybe in the focus, we will get better at those things and have a deeper understanding of those things.
Indeed.
So we have several events coming up. We live in a great area. We have an exciting meta, and everyone does a really good job of participating. And so the first thing to talk about is we have our 2019 Masters League. It begins today.
Yep.
Dan, did you submit your list?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Yeah, Ozzy and I have a benefactor. Thank you to Perry for helping us out. So we're in the Masters League, and so I submitted our list yesterday. Hopefully I did it correctly. I'm sure Ben will let us know.
Right.
Next Level Gaming is having their next steamroller on Saturday, January 26th, and that's down in Salem, Oregon. It's the new store, and and you can find the registration on the COG Collective events page. Next month in Bend on February 9th is the 3-man team tournament. And so I don't think I'll be able to participate in that. I haven't really found a team and don't know if I really have the whole day. But I may make the trip and maybe bring the podcasting equipment and maybe do a little short episode at that event. We'll see how that goes. These are ideas I'm rolling around in my head, and I'm speaking them out loud.
Yeah, now they're out there, so
yeah.
there's a couple listeners that will try to hold you to it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Portland Game Store is going to have their next steamroller on, I think, Sunday, February 16th. And then and the big event, the big woohoo, like everyone pay attention to this, is the PDX Open the first weekend in March 2nd.
Yeah, and this is going to be a War Machine Weekend qualifier.
That's right. It's a wild card event, right?
Yes.
And so this will so if you go there and you perform well, you might find yourself in St. Louis in October. Is that War Machine Weekend is?
Sure.
Yeah, good question. It's on the bucket list. I can't speak from experience, can I? But yeah, it's going to be at the Heathman Hotel downtown Portland. It's going to start early. Registration is going to be at 8 and dice at 9 because they're going to try to get it all in one day, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You have to register for this event at Event B. And so don't go to the COG Collective because it won't have it's not posted there currently. But Event B, like the little bzz insect B, all one word.com. And I think you'll be able to search just War Machine Invitational or PDX Open probably is what you want to search for, and you'll be able to find it.
I know there's a Facebook posting somewhere.
Oh,
We'll have
good.
to try to get up on our Spellstorm Miniatures Facebook page.
Okay.
But,
we can share it there.
Yeah, someone edited Cray writing on top of the Oregon sign, or usually there's something else writing there. The
Nice.
But
Nice. Yeah, so that's a big event. It's gonna be 64 player, and so hopefully we'll have a lot of registrants, and I hope that event is just big. There are 2 more events that are sort of TBD. One of them is the Winter Rampage at Runenborg. Yep. There's some conversation about that and whether or not that has not been revealed. And then another event is our own King of Coins event. And so we are making a lot of progress on that.
Yep.
And looking forward to getting that. I think we'll be able to slide in our opening rounds in between the Masters and the Open, and then we'll have our 8-man finals probably after that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
We'll work that before the next podcast. We should have all that dialed in and ready to be announced.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So last things, I guess we have our hobby desk. And Dan, what are you working on?
Well, I've got a few things. I finished up my my brigands along with a brigand warlord. Actually feel really good about my pace that I painted those guys at. Although then I step away from the table and it's just like a lot of brown. I realized, I used like 5 shades of brown. But hey.
As my mom told me when I was growing up, brown goes with everything.
There you go. Yeah. So. And then next up, I think I got to get my Dire Troll bomber painted.
Nice.
That's kind of my goal.
Nice. I've been very active in the organizational side of things, and then I have been building. I'm in the building phase, and so I'm really excited about that. Put together a cannoneer and a sentry and bronze bag and everything, and so and I have put some paint on a few models, but they're definitely work in progress at the moment. So. I'm just really excited to be able to have models to put on the table. So really proud of that. Hey, I thought today was a good episode.
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer than some of our normal ones, but a good conversation piece.
Yeah, I think having that just a friendly conversation about what to play. There's so many games out there to play. Our whole vision here is just to encourage people to play more games. I think that includes the number of games, but then also types of games too. And it can be fun for everyone. So thanks for listening today. Thanks for listening to Spellstorm Miniatures, where we just want to inspire you to play more games.
Boom, 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 boom,